Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Sudan's army agrees to extend a fragile truce for another 72 hours, and the African Union calls for international support in responding to the humanitarian crisis sparked by almost 2 weeks of fierce conflict. Also, Uganda's president asks Parliament to tone down a homophobic bill that would criminalise even identifying as gay and would deliver the most extreme legislation of its kind should it be signed into law. And Congolese communities in the country's east say that successes claimed by the East African force sent in to rein in M23 rebels have been overblown. But first, Sudan's army has agreed to extend a shaky truce with the Rapid Support Forces for another 72 hours. Since conflict erupted on the 15th, multiple ceasefires have failed to completely stop the fighting, but lulls in Khartoum have helped thousands flee the capital and the country. On Thursday, there were reports of violent rampages by fighters through the city of Jenaina in Darfur. The African Union's called for international help in responding to the humanitarian crisis sparked by the war, and world powers have been racing to evacuate their citizens, and Sudanese refugees have been seeking refuge in neighbouring countries. Well, we have with us today Madi Berar, who fled Khartoum with his family and has just arrived back in France after spending several days in Djibouti. Madi, thanks so much for coming in to speak to us. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm fine, Georgia. It has been a very difficult, stressful time. We fled Khartoum on the 23rd on Sunday, 23rd, and we arrived, thank God, yesterday morning to Paris. We have been taken in charge with an organization called France Horizon. We are in a hotel, everything is good. We are safe, me and my family, but my friends and my thoughts are with my friends, my extended families, my cousins, and all the Sudanese citizens that are going through a real humanitarian crisis and catastrophe. It's really saddening. We are shocked. We have been taken by surprise by this outbreak.
What were those days that you spent in the midst of the fighting? What were they like for you? What did you experience?
It was a nightmare. We were, because I've been part of I'm part of the leadership of a political party who is one of the main parties who is leading, which are leading the political process and trying to get to a final political agreement. There were a lot of progress in this process. And we did not expect at all this sort of absurd war.
Because before it all broke out, there was actually hope.
Exactly.
That the two sides were actually coming together, that there was some way forward to kind of civilian governance and democracy in the country.
Exactly. We signed a framework agreement on December with RSF, the army and the civilians. We went forward with the process. We organized workshops concerning the main issues of peace, of dismantling the ex-regime, of the security sector reform, we were almost at the final stage of attaining a final political agreement. It was planned to be signed on the 11th of April. But unfortunately, there are other forces and other dynamics that took place, and they didn't see in this success of this political process in their interests, especially the extremists, the Islamists, who were part of the regime of General al-Bashir.
So do you see this as being a clash of the clash of ideologies, as in a future for Sudan, or is it just a clash of power? Is it a power struggle?
It's all of that. It's extremely a complex situation. You have centers of interest, of power, who are in constant struggle. But in the middle, you have this very large organization of Islamists who were part of the ex-regime of General al-Bashir, and who have influence on many actors, especially military ones, and especially in the army. And we believe that they instigated this outbreak. We have been looking and we have been, seeing escalation of the security situation for long months. Deployment of troops from both sides, but we conducted some dialogue and some talks between the two generals, and there was a meeting planned to happen on the 15th itself at 11 in the morning, and unfortunately it broke out, and now we are working to stop the war first and try to get back to the track of political dialogue and to the track of transitional period and establish a civilian-led government.
What about all of those you left behind in Khartoum? Have you been in touch with them? What have they been saying about what it's been like since you left?
It's really, it's catastrophic. People are under stress. They have been bombed by aircrafts, war aircrafts, in a random way. RSF is mostly controlling the ground, and the army is controlling the air. So the RSF is using civilians as human shields, and the air forces are bombing in a random way, no matter what or how many civilians victims die in the streets and in the homes. The battle takes place in the streets, in the center of a city that has never gone through such a situation. This is for Khartoum. Khartoum has always been a peaceful city, joyful city, but Sudan also faced, a lot of clashes and a lot of violence through 30 or 40 years in Darfur and other places. But Khartoum was an exception, has always been an exception, until the 15th of April, of course.
And what about elsewhere in the country? Because we're hearing actually on Thursday that, there have been some pretty violent clashes between the RSF and the army in Jenaina.
Yes.
When you were in Khartoum, was there an awareness about what was happening elsewhere in the country?
Of course, what is very dangerous and risky with this, with the continuation of this war, is that it will take a tribal and ethnic dimension in very security fragile areas like Darfur, like the Blue Nile areas, where there's intercommunal tensions. So we are now trying to stop this war at any price, because if it extends for more weeks or months, it will turn into tribal, ethnic, and maybe we will see genocides like in Rwanda, or maybe worse. And now Jenaina is a good example of that. It's tribes supporting each side of this conflict, but part of them supporting RSF and the others supporting the Sudanese army. So it's very dangerous. This is why we are asking the international community to make enough pressure to stop this war, and we as a civil society are working also on that.
Thank you so much, Madi Bera. We wish you and your family the very best, and hoping as well for the best possible outcome for Sudan.
Thank you, Georgia.
In other news, Uganda's president asked Parliament to tone down a homophobic bill that criminalises even admitting to being gay. The proposed laws would even impose the death penalty under certain circumstances. But it looks like pressure from foreign donors has prompted calls for a revision from the top. Clementi Roma has more.
Uganda media says the country could lose up to $400 million in US funding because of Parliament's recent vote on the anti-homosexuality bill. The US has delayed a major aid plan for over 1 million HIV/AIDS sufferers for the next year because the proposed laws would also jeopardize access to treatment for the LGBTQ+ community. Washington is Uganda's biggest donor, handing over just under $1 billion every year. In 2014, the US used this relationship to pressure Kampala over a similar law. This month, Museveni sent the homophobic bill back to Parliament for revision. He's asked his MPs not to criminalize being homosexual, but still penalize same-sex sexual relations. If it's amended, Museveni says he's ready to sign the bill into law, even in the face of continued criticism from the West. Foreign interference may also have undermined LGBTQ+ rights in Uganda. This week, British media proved that government aid funds finance anti-LGBT evangelical groups in Uganda for years. The UK said the funding stopped in February.
Now, Congolese communities in the country's east say that successes claimed by the East African force sent in to rein in M23 militia have been overblown. Bunagana fell to the militants last June. The regional force says that rebels have withdrawn in line with the Luanda agreement signed last November. But residents say that they're still not certain of their safety. Our correspondent reports.
Battle tanks, heavy weaponry. The Ugandan soldiers of the East African Regional Force are flexing their military might in Bunagana. They say they have now regained control of this Congolese border town. It was the first city to fall to M23 rebels in June last year.
Our military force is securing that portion of the border. When we arrived, we found M23 elements in position on the hill over there. They're no longer here. They fled outside the city.
The Ugandan force says Bunagana is now safe and is encouraging locals who fled the M23 incursion to return home. But at the city's border post, trucks are now scarce when they used to crowd the custom authorities between DRC and Uganda.
There's almost no one there. I'm coming back from Uganda. There are definitely still rebels, but I haven't had any problems.
When the M23 took the city, I fled, but living in the camp is so hard. I know there are rebels, but I have to come back, otherwise my kids will starve.
Despite reassuring words from the military authorities, Bunagana people are still reluctant to settle back in the city. Some suspect the Ugandan troops collaborated with the M23. They say the regional force does not even try to pressure the rebels to leave the occupied areas. Suspicions Kinshasa authorities share.
We're expecting a truthful discussion with the regional force. You know that the Ugandan army chief has recently arrived in Kinshasa. We need to have a clear understanding of Uganda's position moving forward.
The Ugandan contingent of the EARF maintains that M23 is complying with the terms of the Luanda agreement and withdrawing from occupied areas. Uganda troops are still operating across DR Congo's troubled east. The Congo's army calls claims of the M23 withdrawal illusory, insisting that the rebels, on the contrary, are reinforcing their positions in the eastern parts of the country.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.